Hello, I wanted to welcome you back and thank you again for purchasing my course on drawing maps. Before we get started with anything, I'm going to be going through a quick Photoshop basics tutorial. If you are already familiar with Photoshop, feel free to skip. We're going to be installing the brushes that I have included with the course, as well as the textures. And any of the other assets that will be provided. So assuming you have Photoshop open, the first thing we're going to do is open up a new file just to play around with. To do that, you can press the Create New button, which should be on the left. Or you can press File, New, or Control N. Here is the sizes you can work with. You press this menu here, you can change what units of measurements you're using. I stick with inches. For the most part, sometimes I go pixels. If I have an EU client, I might go millimeters. 8.5 by 11 inches is the standard printing paper size. So if you're not planning on drawing anything that will be printed into anything special, this is the size I would recommend with. Your resolution is, or DPI is dots per inch. And what that basically means is you have more or less pixels within a given inch. So if you're only going to be creating something that you're going to post on the internet, you're not going to print out, 72 is perfectly fine. However, anything you plan on printing out, set this to 300. If it's not 300, then you're not going to have enough pixels to create something that looks good in print. Color mode, RGB color is great for working with anything you're going to use online. However, you have to make sure that if you're going to be printing something out, printers work in CMYK color. So that means that if you're using RGB colors, not all of the colors will print in CMYK, and I'll show you what I mean by that in a minute. I would stick with 8-bit. The background, you can choose white. You can also make this gray if the white is too bright for you, which I do recommend. And that's basically it. So now that you have your settings, how you want them, you can also change the title here. You can press create, and Photoshop should bring up a canvas. Here on the top is your ruler. By pressing Control R, you hide and show your ruler. If you press F, it changes the dock, your Photoshop workspace. On the left here, you have your tools. The most common ones we will be using for drawing maps is, of course, the brush tool, or B, the eraser tool. We'll also be using the marquee tools, or the lasso tool, the magic wand tool, and the rectangular marquee tool. We'll also use the pen tool, the text tool, and of course we'll be zooming in and out. And on some occasions we'll be using the paint bucket tool. These other tools I invite you to explore. They can be very useful. However, they are better for photo manipulation purposes, and you don't really usually need to use them for drawing maps. If we go to File, you can go down, sorry, if you go to Edit, you can go down to Keyboard Shortcuts, and here you will be able to save your keyboard shortcuts. So for example, the most important keybind that you will have is probably undo/redo, which mine is set to Control Z. I will change this to default so I make sure that we're on the same page. And you can save presets. Control Z, step forward, Shift Control Z, or step backwards, Alt Control Z. One thing that might be a little bit confusing with Photoshop that might be a little bit different from other programs is undo/redo is not the same as step backwards, and I'll show you what I mean by that. Another very important keybind is save, which I don't think I'm finding it right here. But to save, you can press Control S, and you will want to be pressing that quite often to save your progress. So you press Control S. If you don't have a file for this yet, it'll bring up the Save As option, and you can change the name of your file. Press Save As. So if you make a mistake, pressing Control Z only undo/redos the last mistake. However, if you press Control Alt Z, it will keep going backwards until you meet the limit that it saves, which I'm not sure what the limit is. So if you've just downloaded Photoshop, the only brushes you should have, I'm pretty sure, are the general brushes here. You have your soft round brush. To increase the size of your brushes, press the open and bracket keys. The transparency, and this option here adds transparency, which we won't be using for most of the map making process, if ever. This option here adds line weight. And in order for these options to work for you, you have to have a pen tablet or a drawing tablet that allows for pressure sensitivity drawings. So I highly recommend that you purchase a drawing tablet. They range from expensive to cheap. I would do your research and find out which ones you like. The most common is the Wacom series, but I use XP Pen because it's very affordable and the quality is very good. The next common brush is the hard round brush. However, I will be supplying a brush pack that is mine and free to use. I do hope that you give me some credit if you use my brushes. If not, that's fine, but I would appreciate it. And so to install the brushes, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure we have our brush tool selected. We're going to press the drop down menu here. We're going to press this cogwheel up here, and we're going to go down to import brushes. And so here, my brush pack in the that you should have downloaded, you double click and it adds it to your list of brushes. And I will be going through each of these throughout the course. If you want to delete it, you right click, press delete group. If you want to make your own brush, you draw the shape that you want. You make sure that the background is transparent. You highlight the area with the marquee tool. You press edit, and then you press define brush preset, and this gives you the option to name it. And of course, if you want to change the brushes, or if you want to edit the brush, because right now all it does is basics, we'll have to open up first our brush menu, which for me has disappeared. So we'll go to Window, Brush Settings, and here you have a bunch of options that I recommend you look through. I won't be going through making brushes too heavily in detail, as that is not within the scope of this course, unfortunately. Next, I have a texture that we have that is also included. So we're going to go to our paint bucket tool. We're going to click pattern. We're going to go to the drop down menu. Just like before, we're going to press the cogwheel and we're going to press import patterns. And here you see I have a tree fill pattern that you can import into Photoshop, and that will help speed up the process of drawing forests in your map for a given style. For coloring, I know before we mentioned that RGB colors and printers are not friends. You will not get the good colors that you like in RGB through a printer. Your color wheel should be to the right. And if you click the hashed lines here, this drop down menu, you can change yours to color wheel. By default, it's set to hue cube. I like mine on color wheel. If you press Control Y, the color setting changes to a CMYK output. However, if you're going to change, you will need to change your color wheel to a CMYK color spectrum. I'm not too sure if there's a CMYK color wheel. I'm sure there is. So all of these colors here in the CMYK spectrum are perfectly safe to use. These will print as they look like. However, you have to keep in mind that they will come out a little bit darker because your screen is backlit, which does make things brighter. So these colors are fine. If we press Control Y, okay. Sorry, this color is not supposed to change because this is a CMYK color. If we go to image, we go to mode and press CMYK color. Now our colors are CMYK, and that won't adjust when we press the button. However, if we go back to RGB color and we go to our RGB cube or RGB color wheel, particularly in the greens, CMYK is not great with greens. I'm trying to find a color that will struggle. Okay, well, all of these colors are doing fantastic. So, point being, oh, it's still set. This is still set to CMYK. So let me change that back. I thought I had changed it. Okay. Now we have our bright RGB colors, and if we change to our CMYK output, you can see how much the colors just lose life. Unfortunately, printers don't have the ability to provide these nice bright colors, so that is just something to keep in mind when it comes to coloring your map or doing any other sort of illustrating in any digital program, not just Photoshop. To zoom in and out into Photoshop, you have the spyglass or zoom tool. Left clicking zooms in. If you wish to zoom out, you hold down Alt and you zoom out. If you want to move the canvas while zoomed in, you hold down spacebar and drag. To zoom out again, you hold Alt on the spyglass and zoom out. You can drag the canvas. If you wish to rotate the canvas, you can use the rotate tool or press R and rotate the area you see. Now, there are many different functions in Photoshop, and I will be going over more of them throughout the course. One important thing that I should mention is if you want to create a new layer, there's a button down on the bottom right here, and you press create new layer. If you want to group your layers, you highlight by holding Shift and clicking the bottom layer, and you press this folder icon here, which says create new group, and you have a group, and you can hide your multiple layers at once, and we'll be creating tons of groups. And that's basically it for the fundamental basics. Just to get started, that is essentially all that you need. We'll be going over a lot more. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you. One quick thing I forgot to mention that's quite important is if you have a drawing and you need to flip it, you can press Control T. That brings up a box. Here you can right click, flip horizontal, flip vertical. You can by default, just increasing the size of the box keeps the dimensions the same. However, if you press Shift, you can resize it. You can rotate by clicking on the outer edges. If you click this button here, it lets you warp the image. And that is basically it. Thank you.